The message came on a quiet Tuesday morning. At first, the radio operators at Earth's Deep Space Listening Post thought it was just another burst of cosmic noise. But this signal was different. It was structured, clearly artificial, and coming from somewhere near Pluto's orbit. Within hours, every major observatory on Earth turned their instruments toward the outer solar system. What they found left them speechless. A fleet of 300 massive ships, each one larger than the biggest aircraft carrier ever built on Earth, sitting motionless in the dark void of space. The aliens broadcast their message in simple mathematical sequences first, then in increasingly complex patterns until Earth's computers could decrypt their language. Their situation was dire. Their entire fleet was stranded, their advanced quantum drive systems had failed, and they had no way to fix them. They're asking for our help. General Roberts laughed in disbelief during the emergency United Nations meeting. Their ships make ours look like rowboats, and they're asking us for help. Captain James Miller sat quietly in the back of the room, studying the technical data the aliens had shared. While the politicians argued about security risks and first contact protocols, his mind was already working on the problem. After 20 years of keeping rickety space stations running with duct tape and spare parts, he knew something about fixing impossible problems. "Sir," he spoke up, causing the room to fall silent. "Their technology might be advanced, but sometimes that's the problem. When you engineer something to be perfect, it can break in ways you never expect." The UN Secretary General leaned forward. "What are you suggesting, Captain?" "Let me put together a team. Engineers, mechanics, problem solvers. People who know how to fix things when they don't have the right tools or parts. That's what we humans do best. We adapt." The debate raged for another 6 hours. Some nations wanted to ignore the aliens completely. Others wanted to demand their technology in exchange for help. But in the end, they agreed to Miller's plan. Humanity would help, not because there was something to gain, but because it was the right thing to do. Within 48 hours, Miller had assembled his team. 20 of Earth's best engineers and technicians, people who had kept ships running in the worst conditions imaginable. They loaded their shuttle with tools, spare parts, and everything else they could think of. As Miller told his team, "Pack like you're going to fix a car with parts from a bicycle." The journey to the alien fleet took 2 weeks. As they approached, the size of the alien ships became clear. They were beautiful in their perfection. Sleek silver hulls that seemed to flow like liquid metal, not a single weld or rift visible. The alien admiral met them in the docking bay of the command ship. He was tall and elegant, with silvery skin that matched his ship. His translator converted his thoughts into clear English, but there was no hiding the worry in his eyes. "We appreciate your response to our distress call," the admiral said, "though I must admit, we are confused. Your species has barely reached your own moon. Your technology is primitive by our standards. How do you expect to help us?" Miller smiled. "Sometimes the best solutions aren't about having the fanciest tools. They're about looking at problems in a different way. Show us what's wrong, and let us try. What's the worst that could happen?" The admiral's expression would have been a frown on a human face. "The worst? Total quantum drive failure could tear a hole in space-time and destroy your entire solar system." "Well," Miller said, pulling a wrench from his toolkit, "then we better not mess up. Tom, grab your diagnostic kit. Let's see what we're dealing with." As the human team followed the admiral into the ship's engine room, Miller couldn't help but notice how everything was perfectly designed, perfectly organized, perfectly labeled. Maybe too perfect. In his experience, the universe wasn't perfect. It was messy and chaotic, and sometimes you needed messy, chaotic solutions to work with it. Little did the aliens know, humanity's greatest strength wasn't in making things perfect. It was in making imperfect things work anyway. And they were about to learn that lesson firsthand. The alien engine room was unlike anything the human team had ever seen. Instead of pipes, wires, and mechanical parts, It was filled with crystalline structures that pulsed with soft blue light. There wasn't a single tool in sight, not even a control panel, just smooth, perfect surfaces that responded to the alien's touch. Tom whistled as he walked around the main quantum drive core. "It's beautiful," he said, "but where do you fix it when it breaks?" The alien engineer looked confused. "Fix it? It's not designed to break. Every component is perfect." Miller ran his hand along one of the crystal structures. "Everything breaks eventually. That's why we humans always build things with access panels and backup systems." The team spent the next few hours scanning the quantum drive with their simple tools. The aliens watched with a mixture of curiosity and concern as the humans poked and prodded at their perfect technology with what they considered primitive devices. "This is interesting," Miller said, looking at the readings on his tablet. "Your quantum calculations are perfect, down to the smallest decimal point." The Admiral nodded proudly. "Of course. Anything less would be inefficient. But that's exactly the problem," Miller replied. "The universe isn't perfect. Quantum mechanics is all about uncertainty. You're trying to be too precise, and that's what's causing the system to fail." The aliens looked at each other in confusion. The concept seemed to disturb them deeply. One of their engineers spoke up. "But imperfection is wrong. How can embracing error lead to better results?" Tom pulled out a simple gyroscope from his toolkit and set it spinning on a nearby surface. "Watch this," he said. "See how it wobbles a bit? That wobble actually helps it stay upright. If it was perfectly balanced, the smallest bump would knock it over." The aliens gathered around the simple device, watching it with fascination. Miller could almost see the thoughts turning in their minds. "We brought some basic mechanical backup systems with us," Miller continued. "They're not pretty and they're not perfect, but they work. What if we combine them with your quantum technology? Create a hybrid system that can handle a little uncertainty." The Admiral's expression shifted from doubt to curiosity. "Such a combination would be unorthodox. Our scientists have never considered merging advanced and primitive technologies. Sometimes the best solutions aren't the most advanced ones," Miller said, pulling out his toolkit. "Let me show you something we humans call redundancy." Over the next several hours, the human team began setting up their equipment. They installed backup power systems, mechanical safety valves, and emergency shutoffs, all things the aliens had considered unnecessary in their pursuit of perfection. The aliens watched in amazement as the humans worked. They were particularly fascinated by how the team could make quick decisions without running complete simulations, how they could guess at solutions based on experience rather than perfect calculations. "But how can you be sure it will work?" one of the alien engineers asked as Tom installed a mechanical pressure gauge next to their quantum sensors. "We're not," Tom replied with a grin. "That's why we're installing 3 different ways to monitor it. If one fails, we have backups." The concept of multiple imperfect systems working together seemed to both horrify and intrigue the aliens. They began asking questions, not just about the technical aspects, but about the human approach to problem solving. As the day drew to a close, Miller looked at their work. The pristine engine room now had patches of human technology integrated into it. Not pretty, but functional. The contrast between the sleek alien tech and the sturdy human equipment was striking. "Tomorrow we'll start testing the hybrid system," Miller announced. "It won't be perfect, but it doesn't need to be. It just needs to work." The Admiral stared at the modified engine room for a long moment before speaking. Perhaps we have something to learn from your species after all." Little did they know, this was just the beginning of what humans would teach them about the value of imperfection. The next morning, the human team gathered around their hybrid system for the first test. The alien engineers stood at a safe distance, their silver skin reflecting the pulsing lights of the engine room. They had spent the entire night running simulations, and none of them predicted success. "This solution is technically incorrect," the lead alien engineer said, pointing at Miller's drawings. "The quantum field calculations don't balance perfectly." Miller nodded as he checked the mechanical pressure gauges they had installed. You're right, they don't. But sometimes being a little wrong in the right way is better than being perfectly right in the wrong way. The aliens murmured among themselves, clearly uncomfortable with this concept. Tom was underneath the console, making final adjustments to their backup systems. He called out, "Ready when you are, Captain." "All right," Miller said, addressing both teams. "We're going to start with just 5% power. The quantum drive will be slightly unbalanced, and our mechanical systems will compensate for the fluctuations. It won't be smooth, but it should work." The Admiral stepped forward. "Captain Miller, if this fails, the quantum backlash could destroy this entire section of the ship. That's why we installed emergency shoot-offs." Miller replied with a confident smile. 3 different kinds, remember. Trust us." Miller gave the signal, and Tom began the startup sequence. The crystal structures hummed to life, their blue glow intensifying. The aliens' perfect displays showed growing instability in the quantum fields, exactly as their simulations had predicted. But something else was happening too. The mechanical gauges showed the system was finding its own balance, like a bicycle that stays upright only when it's moving. The quantum fluctuations that had been crashing the aliens' perfect systems were now being absorbed and redirected by the human backup equipment. "Impossible," whispered one of the alien engineers, staring at the readings. "The system is stabilizing, but not in any way our equations predicted." Tom rolled out from under the console, his face smeared with grease but wearing a big grin. "That's because we're not trying to control everything. We're letting the system find its own sweet spot." The test continued for 10 minutes. The hybrid drive wasn't running perfectly. It shuddered occasionally, and the power output wavered up and down. But it was running, something that hadn't happened since the fleet became stranded. Miller watched the aliens' reactions carefully. He could see them struggling to understand how something so wrong could actually work. It went against everything they believed about engineering and technology. "Let's take it up to 10%, Miller announced. The aliens tensed, but nobody objected. As the power increased, the ship's systems began to respond. Emergency lights that had been dark for weeks came back to life. The subtle vibration that marked a healthy engine returned to the deck plates. "Look at this," Tom called out, pointing to one of their monitors. "The quantum field is actually stronger than before. It's like the imperfections are making it more stable, not less." The Admiral moved closer to examine the readings. "But our simulations showed this was impossible. We ran millions of calculations." "That's the thing about reality," Miller said, adjusting one of the mechanical valves. "It doesn't care about our calculations. Sometimes you have to stop trying to predict everything and just try things." For the next hour, they gradually increased power, teaching the aliens how to read the simple mechanical gauges alongside their quantum displays. The humans showed them how to listen to the engine's sounds, feel its vibrations, and trust their instincts as much as their instruments. By the end of the test, the hybrid drive was running at 30% power, more than enough to begin moving the stranded ships if needed. The Admiral turned to Miller, his expression showing a mix of confusion and respect. "Your solution breaks 17 different laws of quantum physics. It ignores basic principles of field dynamics. By all our knowledge, it should be catastrophically failing. And yet," Miller patted the nearest piece of human equipment, "sometimes the best solutions don't look like solutions at all. Now, who's ready to try this on the rest of the fleet?" The aliens looked at each other, then back at their working engine. For the first time since the humans arrived, they began to truly understand that there might be more than one path to success. Success has a way of making people overconfident. After 3 days of installing hybrid systems across the fleet, both humans and aliens had fallen into a comfortable routine. That's when everything went wrong. The warning came from ship number 127. A minor power fluctuation grew into a cascading failure that began spreading through the quantum network connecting all 300 ships. The aliens' perfect systems, designed to work in harmony, were now trapped in a deadly feedback loop. Shut everything down, the Admiral ordered, his silver skin paling to almost white. The quantum cascade will tear the fleet apart. But the alien shutdown commands weren't working. Their systems were too interconnected, too perfect in their synchronization. The failure in one ship was causing failures in all of them. Miller watched the chaos unfold on the command ship's main display. The human team had only upgraded 40 ships with their hybrid systems. The rest were still running on pure alien technology, and they were all starting to go critical. "Tom," Miller shouted over the growing sound of alarms, "can we use our hybrid ships to break the quantum link?" Tom was already running calculations on his tablet. "The hybrid systems are too weak. We'd need something bigger, something to disrupt the entire network at once." The Admiral's voice was grim. "Without the network, the fleet's systems will fail completely. We will be dead in space." "Better than being torn apart," Miller replied. He turned to his team. "We need ideas. Crazy ones. The kind that would never work in a simulation." The aliens watched in confusion as the humans began throwing out suggestions rapid fire, each one more impossible than the last. They didn't run simulations. They didn't check quantum equations. They just kept building on each other's ideas. "What if we overload one of the hybrid systems?" Tom suddenly said, "Not to break the network, but to scramble it, like static on a radio." The alien engineers began objecting immediately. The quantum harmonics ruled. "No time for theories." Miller cut them off. "Tom, what do you need?" Tom pointed to their mechanical backup systems. "We can use these to force a power surge through the quantum crystals. It'll be messy, but if we time it right, it will destroy the crystals," an alien engineer protested. "We can replace crystals," Miller said. "We can't replace people." "Do it." The next few minutes were a blur of activity. The human team worked with desperate speed, ripping out safety systems they had just installed days before. The aliens could only watch as their perfect technology was being jury-rigged into something that defied all their scientific principles. "Ready," Tom shouted. The quantum cascade was reaching critical levels. Several ships were already reporting hull breaches. Miller looked at the Admiral. "Last chance to stop us." The Admiral stared at the disaster unfolding on his screens. Finally, he nodded. "Save my people, Captain. Whatever it takes." Tom threw the switch. Every alarm in the ship went off at once. The quantum crystals screamed as raw power surged through them in ways their designers had never intended. Emergency shoot-offs blew. Backup systems failed. But in the chaos, something amazing happened. The power surge created a wave of quantum static that washed through the fleet's network. It wasn't elegant. It wasn't precise. But like a breaker tripping to save a house from an electrical fire, it shut down the cascade. When the emergency lights came back on, the command room was filled with smoke from burned-out circuits. The perfect displays were dark. The quantum network was down, but the fleet was intact. The Admiral broke the silence. How did you know that would work?" Miller helped Tom up from where he'd been thrown by the power surge. "We didn't, but we knew doing nothing would definitely fail. So we tried something. Sometimes that's all you can do." The aliens looked around their damaged but intact ship, then at the fleet status displayed on the few working screens. 300 ships, all damaged, all needing repairs, but all still in one piece. "Perhaps," the Admiral said slowly, "your people could teach us more about this. Trying something." 2 weeks after the quantum cascade crisis, the fleet was nearly ready to depart. The ships now ran on a permanent hybrid of alien and human technology. It wasn't as efficient as the original system, but as Miller liked to say, "It's better to be reliably good than perfectly broken." The command ship's engine room had become an unusual classroom. Human engineers worked side by side with alien crews, teaching them about mechanical backups, emergency repairs, and the art of improvisation. The aliens, in turn, helped the humans understand their quantum technology better. No, no, Tom said to a group of alien engineers as they practiced repairs. Don't try to calculate everything. Sometimes you need to feel the engine's rhythm. Listen to it. When something's wrong, you'll know. The aliens were struggling with this concept, but they were trying. After seeing how human intuition had saved their fleet, they were eager to learn. Their perfect displays now sat side by side with simple pressure gauges and manual controls. Miller watched from the doorway as more alien crews arrived for training. The Admiral stood beside him, his silver skin now showing marks and scratches from working with tools, something that would have been unthinkable just weeks ago. "We've received a message from the Galactic Council," the Admiral said. "They're very interested in what happened here." Miller raised an eyebrow, worried about their perfect technology failing. The Admiral made a sound that might have been a laugh. "Actually, they want to know more about humans. Your species has done something remarkable, Captain. You've shown us a different way of thinking." "We just did what we always do," Miller shrugged. "Solve problems with whatever we have on hand." "Exactly," the Admiral nodded. "For thousands of years, our civilization has pursued perfection. We built perfect ships, perfect systems, perfect solutions, but the universe isn't perfect. When things went wrong, we didn't know how to adapt." Across the engine room, an alien engineer successfully completed his first emergency repair without using the quantum diagnostic tools. His fellow crew members celebrated this small victory, acting more human-like than they probably realized. "The Council has decided to invite Earth to join the galactic community," the Admiral continued. "Not because of your technology. You're right, it is primitive compared to ours. They want you for this." He gestured at the training session. "For teaching basic repairs, for teaching us how to think differently, how to adapt, how to embrace imperfection and uncertainty. These are skills our civilization has forgotten in its quest for perfection. Skills we desperately need." Miller watched as Tom showed another group how to repair quantum crystals using mechanical tools. The aliens were clumsy with the unfamiliar equipment, but they were learning. More importantly, they were learning to trust their own judgment instead of relying solely on computers and perfect calculations. "We're going to recommend that all ships in the galaxy carry human engineers," the Admiral said. "My crew has already started a saying. If you have an impossible problem, call the humans. They probably won't solve it perfectly, but they'll solve it somehow." As the day wound down, the human team gathered for one last inspection of the fleet. The ships no longer looked perfect. Patches of human technology broke up the smooth silver hulls, and tool marks showed where repairs had been made. But they were stronger now, more resilient. "Ready to head home?" Tom asked, packing up his tools. Miller looked out at the fleet, then at the teams of humans and aliens working together. "Actually, I was thinking of accepting the Admiral's offer to help train more of their engineers. Someone needs to teach them that duct tape is the universe's second strongest force." "What's the strongest force?" one of the nearby alien engineers asked curiously. Miller grinned. "Human ingenuity." As the first ships began powering up their hybrid drives for departure, Miller reflected on how far they'd all come. The aliens had learned that imperfection could be a strength, and humanity had gained allies among the stars. Not because they were the strongest or the most advanced, but because they knew something the rest of the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the best solutions aren't perfect, they're just good enough to work. And in the end, that made all the difference. The Galactic Engineering Academy looked nothing like it had 5 years ago. The once pristine halls now featured workshops filled with hand tools, spare parts, and what the aliens had come to call human spaces, areas deliberately designed to be imperfect. Miller walked through the main training hall, watching students from 100 different species working on various projects. He still found it amusing to see beings with silver skin and advanced quantum technology getting excited about learning to use a wrench. Captain Miller, a young alien student, waved from a workbench. "Look what we made." Miller approached the bench where a group of students had built what looked like a quantum computational engine. But instead of being perfectly crafted, it was clearly customized, with mechanical additions and backup systems added in true human style. "We designed it to work better when it's slightly unbalanced," the student explained proudly, "just like your gyroscope lesson." Tom, now the Academy's head instructor, joined them at the workbench. After the fleet incident, he had decided to stay and help build the new training program. "They're getting better at thinking outside the box," he told Miller. Last week, a student solved a quantum drive problem using rubber bands and paper clips. The Academy had become famous across the galaxy. Every major spacefaring civilization now sent their engineers here to learn what they called human practical engineering. The course was mandatory for all ship's crews, much to the initial horror of the more traditional species. "Remember how they used to panic when something broke?" Tom laughed. "Now they get excited about trying different repair methods." They reached the Academy's main hall, where a large display showed the number of emergency calls handled by human engineering teams across the galaxy. The statistics were impressive: 99% success rate in solving impossible problems, though the solutions were rarely elegant. The Admiral, now the Academy's director, was waiting for them. His once perfect silver skin showed proud marks of hands-on work, and he wore a tool belt along with his formal uniform, a fashion that had caught on among his people. "The Council's annual report just came in," he said, holding up a data pad. "Human engineering techniques have reduced critical failures across the galaxy by 73%. Though they note that complaints about inelegant solutions have increased by 500%. Miller grinned. "Can't make an omelet without breaking a few quantum eggs." They watched as another training class filed in, carrying their required toolkit, a mix of advanced alien technology and basic human tools. Each student also carried the Academy symbol, a roll of duct tape crossed with a quantum spanner. "Earth's president called," the Admiral said. "More species are requesting to open engineering exchange programs. They want to learn on Earth, in what they call natural human conditions." "You mean chaos?" Miller asked. "Exactly. They've realized that Earth's unpredictable environment is perfect for learning adaptability. Though several students were quite shocked by your weather systems. A commotion near the entrance caught their attention. A new ship had just landed, sleek and silver like all alien ships, but with visible patches and modifications. The standard distress call these days, requesting human engineering assistance. "Ready for another impossible problem?" Tom asked, already reaching for his toolkit. Miller watched as students and instructors prepared for the new challenge, all of them mixing alien precision with human creativity. The galaxy had changed in ways nobody could have predicted. The perfect had learned to embrace the imperfect, and the universe was better for it. "You know what the best part is?" Miller said as they headed toward the landing bay. "We're still making it up as we go along." And somewhere in the vast galaxy, a ship's engineer reached for a roll of duct tape instead of a quantum spanner and smiled. The humans had taught them well. 10 years had passed since the stranded fleet incident, and humanity's influence had spread far beyond just engineering. The Galactic Council's main meeting chamber was no longer the perfect, orderly space it had once been. Today it looked more like a busy workshop, with representatives from hundreds of species gathered around cluttered tables rather than sitting in formal rows. Miller, now Earth's ambassador to the Council, watched as a holographic display showed the latest crisis, a mysterious space anomaly that was disrupting travel lanes across 3 sectors. The perfect scientific instruments of the advanced species couldn't make sense of it. "The anomaly defies all known laws of physics," a crystalline being announced. "Our finest quantum computers cannot predict its behavior." "Good," Miller said, making several heads turn in surprise. "That means we can try some human-style problem-solving." The Council had learned to listen when humans suggested unconventional approaches. After the success of the Engineering Academy, they had started applying human thinking to other fields: medicine, architecture, even diplomacy. Tom appeared on a video link from a research station near the anomaly. His hair had gone gray, but his eyes still held that same excited spark when facing an impossible problem. "We've been watching how ships interact with the disturbance," he reported. "It's like a river with hidden currents. We don't need to understand it perfectly. We just need to learn its patterns." The council members murmured among themselves. A decade ago, they would have insisted on perfect understanding before taking any action. Now they were learning to work with incomplete information. "We've been sending out small probe ships," Tom continued. "Not the perfect sensor platforms everyone uses, but simple mechanical devices. They're showing us something interesting." The display changed to show a series of rough maps, hand-drawn rather than computer-generated. They showed how ships could safely navigate the anomaly by following certain irregular paths. "It's like sailing," Miller explained to the council. "Ancient human ships didn't understand ocean currents perfectly, but they learned to work with them. We're doing the same thing in space." An alien scientist, her silver skin now decorated with tool marks like many of her kind, stepped forward. "We've also been applying human medical techniques to help affected crews. Sometimes a simple solution like rest and hydration works better than perfect molecular reconstruction." The changes went beyond just technical solutions. The council chamber now had a coffee machine in the corner. The aliens had discovered that informal discussions over hot drinks often led to better solutions than formal debates. Some species had even started telling jokes, a concept they had learned from humans. "There's something else," Tom said from the video link. "We think the anomaly might not be a problem at all. If we adjust our ships to work with it rather than fight it, it could actually make travel faster." A younger alien engineer stepped up, proudly wearing the now famous duct tape and quantum spanner symbol. "We've modified a test ship using both ancient human sailing principles and our quantum technology. The results are impressive." The display showed a small ship smoothly riding the invisible currents of the anomaly, like a skilled surfer on a wave. It was achieving speeds that should have been impossible, all because it wasn't trying to be perfect. Miller couldn't help but smile. The galaxy had changed so much since that first encounter with the stranded fleet. The pursuit of perfection had given way to something more flexible, more adaptable, more human. "Next week's emergency session will be at Joe's Space Diner on Station 7, announced the council chief, another change that would have been unthinkable years ago. "They make excellent pancakes, and somehow we always solve problems better there." As the meeting wound down, Miller looked at the chaos of the chamber, the mixed technologies, the informal groups, the creative disorder that had replaced perfect order. Humanity hadn't just taught the galaxy how to fix engines. They'd taught them how to embrace the beautiful imperfection of life itself. And somewhere in deep space, a ship rode the currents of a mysterious anomaly, its crew not trying to conquer the unknown, but to dance with it, just as humans had always done.